COVID happened. And during COVID, I started thinking, maybe that's not enough. I feel like I actually want to live in Spain and live on the Camino. And so I gave it a shot. I had no idea what I was doing, and I applied for the visa and somehow got it. And now I'm here. So it has changed my entire life. It's given me a new vocation and so much more.
So both of you, I had the pleasure of meeting you this past May in Santiago, and that was a highlight of the Camino. What is it like living in Santiago and seeing the pilgrims come into that very cherished city, all inspired and excited about finishing their pilgrimage? What is it like being like their greeter, their host, and what is your advice to them as they then leave Santiago?
You go first, Leigh. Ladies first.
Okay. All right. What's it like? Oh my goodness. I sometimes feel like Mary Tyler Moore as I walk through this city. You guys remember her throwing the hat up, like every day it's exciting being here. I mean, for those of you that have already walked into Santiago, you know how beautiful it is. And it is so exciting to see a pilgrim. Every time I walk into the square, I have goosebumps. I feel like I felt when I first walked in back in 2019, and I feel even more. And it is such an honor to be here. I feel so blessed to be able to greet pilgrims and meet pilgrims here. And I see some faces here that have come into the city this past summer, and it's just been a joy to meet everyone. As far as advice, well, I say to them, the Camino doesn't stop when you arrive in Santiago, right? It just keeps on going. And I have seen so many people's lives completely transformed by their walk. And you may not know when you arrive in Santiago what those transformations are actually going to be. And so I just tell them to be patient and, wait and see what's going to happen.
Johnnie?
Well, it's wonderful. If ever I need cheering up, I go to the Plaza Obradoiro and just look at the pilgrims arriving, and they are joy-filled. And they throw their rucksacks down on the ground, they throw them up in the air, the cyclists hold their bicycles up, everybody cheers. I mean, I don't know how many thousands of people can be at the busiest times can be in the Plaza Obradoiro. And of course, there are many thousands of tourists. And the city's lifeblood is tourism, but there wouldn't be tourists unless there were pilgrims, and there wouldn't be pilgrims unless there was the tomb of St. James in the Cathedral of Santiago. Often my relationship, and I know this is the truth, the same with Leigh, often my relationship with pilgrims starts far back in their journey. Through Facebook and our online activities and books and Leigh's podcast, pilgrims get in touch with us. Recently I've been talking, this is a great coincidence, recently I've been talking to a lassie from London, Anna Maria she's called, and she said, I want to walk the Camino, I've wanted to walk it for a long time. I'm going to do it on my own from Pamplona to Santiago in the winter time. And will I be able to do this? What's the accommodation like? Any special needs and so forth. Anyway, exactly 1 hour ago, I got a text from her saying, I feel very down. I've just walked, it's almost 30 kilometers from Puente La Reina, from Pamplona to Puente La Reina, and I've had lots of negative feedback from other pilgrims. And I said, what negative feedback? And she wrote to me, lots of people telling me I shouldn't be doing this alone. Many people telling me it's too hard to do it in wintertime, that I should only be walking for a couple of days. One man who critiqued the size of my rucksack. It's big because there's a sleeping bag inside it. And she said, John, I've done what you've told me. I promise I've only brought two sets of clothes, hat and gloves, and other toiletries. And of course, I was chatting to her and saying to her, listen, of course you can do this. And in fact, a member of American Pilgrims on the Camino, Anne Bourne, has recently published a book about her lone walk in wintertime on the Camino Frances. So Tom, we support each other. One thing that does concern me is, what are pilgrims going on to when they go home? You know, what do you do? What do you do when your friends and relatives are fed up listening to you talk about the Camino? And I think that's where the pilgrim associations are so important. It's really important for Americans to go back and to get involved with American Pilgrims on the Camino, to join their local chapter. But we must find, now I realize, Tom, you're on the board of American Pilgrims, and who is Dave's also on the board, isn't he? I mean, one of the ideas that I've been promoting, and you must get a hold of, is how we recruit the pilgrims who arrive in the Plata Obradoiro into the pilgrim associations in their home countries. And we must do this because it's fellowship that carries us forward and helps us to relive the Camino as we go on in life. So there's my challenge to you, Thomas.
And John, I'd like to add to that. I want to do a shout out if there's any Puget Sound APOC members right now, or anyone from Salt Lake City. I was very involved, particularly when I was in Salt Lake City. It was during all of the lockdowns, so we couldn't get together. But when I was in Seattle, I was quite involved with the Puget Sound group. And, that's the place to be able to get together and to talk about all the things that we want to talk about, when we're pilgrims, because we almost kind of need a little bit of a support group, because we talk about it so much, and our family members and our friends, they probably get a little tired of hearing about it. And if they haven't walked yet, they don't really realize what we've just completed. So those chapters make such a difference, and they give such an opportunity for folks to get together and learn about the Camino if they haven't walked yet. And if they've already walked, it gives them a bit of a group of folks that they can meet up with and hang out with and talk about their Caminos. So it's a great opportunity.
Go ahead.
No, go on, Tom.
You were talking about how, you want to talk to fellow pilgrims and share your experiences, but the two of you have gone beyond living the experiences and talking about that. When you have finished your Caminos, and I guess you're never really finished with a Camino, you're not only living in Santiago, but you are living the changes of the Camino in your life, because both of you are giving your life, I believe, in service to fellow pilgrims. You are living your life in service to the Camino. Johnnie, let it be known that you volunteered for many years there in Santiago, helping staff the volunteers for the American Pilgrim Office. Leigh, you're now exploring opportunities to have perhaps an American Pilgrim chapter in Santiago, and how we can maybe maximize that for the experience of pilgrims from America coming into Santiago. Can you share about that powerful feeling that you've had, that inspiration to basically transform your lives into a life of service to the Camino and pilgrims?
Well, we're not saints, We haven't become saints, Leigh and I.
Soon, though.
And there's a growing community of people here. Some from the United States, some from England, for God's sake. One or two from Scotland, all moving to Galicia to come here and live and be close to the Camino. I'll be very honest with you. I was a very tough chief executive, and for the last 15 years of my career, I was recruited by organizations which were in difficulty. So I was the guy who imposed the budgets and made people redundant and sacked people and imposed discipline in organizations. And I recently had lunch with the woman who was my chief operating officer. She now works for the Dutch royal family, making grants. Anyway, she came to see me, and we'd lunch, and she said to me at the end of the lunch, "John, you're no longer angry. And if anything, the anger has gone out of me. And, and these are," I said to this lassie, it's about the lessons of the Camino, Tom. I said to this girl, Anna Maria, when she told me about these other pilgrims criticizing her, one of the biggest lessons I learned on the Camino was to keep my nose out of other people's pilgrimages, to lead my own pilgrimage, to deal with my own stuff, not to be critical of others. We all have a natural tendency to feel superior if we're walking longer distances and carrying our rucksacks while somebody else is sending their rucksack ahead. I don't care about any of that. Now, but I had to learn that lesson myself. And these are the lessons of the Camino.
Leigh?
Well, I would say first off, I'm just following in John's footsteps. He has done so much for the Camino community since his arrival. He has made so many major changes for the English-speaking folks that arrive into Santiago. And it's just an honor to be able to try to help out. I feel like everything that I do for the Camino is to give back to what the Camino gave to me. And every time before I start a podcast or any of the work that I'm doing, I'm always thinking about if the work I'm doing just inspires one person to come and walk and it helps heal them or helps them go through some type of transformation that is needed, then everything I'm doing is worth it. I just want to pay it forward at this point. And it's a great feeling to be able to do that right now.
So both of you have talked to so many pilgrims that have come through and so forth on their Caminos. John, you've written several books. What is, if with all of the books you've written, if you had a paragraph that you'd wish to share, that you would say, this is my hope for you, pilgrim. This is my hope that I hope inspires you.
Well, my greatest hope is that pilgrims try to have an open mind. And we need to suspend our prejudices and live the experience of the Camino. And, magical things don't happen every day. It's a process. It's a process, definitely. But the rhythm of walking, the rhythm of talking and sharing with other pilgrims, and learning life's lessons. Do you know, Tom, another wee personal story, I've always had a problem with beggars because I want to say to beggars, get a job, earn some money like I had to do. Why are you asking me to give you the money that I had a job to earn the money? Now, and that's always been my attitude. Anyway, I went on pilgrimage to Shikoku, the smallest island of Japan, and I walked 1,200 kilometers, the 88 temple route around the circumference of Shikoku. And they have this thing called osetai, where the Japanese people believe it's better to give than receive. And so they give gifts freely to the pilgrims. It might be a packet of biscuits. They might pay for your coffee in a restaurant. I got on a bus one day and the man paid my fare. And so forth. And this osetai thing goes on the coldest day. Now, we were moving into winter when I did this, and I crossed the mountain, got soaked, had to get into a bus shelter and change my clothes. I felt miserable. And I was walking along the road and I could hear this creaking sound. And here was someone much older than me, might I say, a very old person on an old-fashioned bicycle, and he had a plastic crate attached to the front of the bicycle, and he stopped and he said, "Pilgrim, this is for you." And he handed me this little package wrapped in newspaper, and it was warm. And what he had done was he had roasted potatoes on the open fire in his house, wrapped them up in newspapers, and he was cycling about to find the pilgrims. So, and I thought to myself, my God, what have I learned on this pilgrimage about my intolerance for people who beg and the wonderful spirit of the people of Japan giving freely. So I learned about a hot potato and a whole lot more at that time. Now, I still have a problem with beggars, but I just give them some money now, and I don't give them a lot of abuse about finding a job. And I'm happier, and I'm sure they're happier with that.
Well, maybe in the winter you can carry around a hot potato to give.
Well, I've thought about that. I've thought about that.
Oh, that's great, John. Leigh, how about you?
My greatest wish for pilgrims that come and walk. Yeah. My greatest wish is that.
Leigh, let me go back and say, you've interviewed so many people too.
Yeah.
So your experiences and all the people that you've interviewed, what's that most, maybe that most inspirational thing that you can share?
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I've interviewed so many people at this point, and I'm telling you, everybody has a Camino story. And, not just everybody comes back and writes a book, right? You don't have to write a book about it, but if you do, that's great too. But I think everybody has a story. And as I start talking to folks, I'm just amazed at the transformations that take place. But I would say some of the stories that have really touched me would be Rocco Rossi. And after he walked the Camino, because he had gone through a very traumatic experience, and after he walked the Camino, he went back home and he started giving back. And the way that he gave back actually saved a life. And so the thing that I really hope for folks is that after they walk, that they figure out what they can do to pay it forward. Maybe it will be to write a book, and that inspires somebody else to walk. Or maybe they go back into their own community and they figure out a way to give back in some way. And I'm just amazed by some of the things that people have done after they've walked a Camino. It's amazing.
So, John, you've transformed your life. You moved to Santiago. You play the organ there so beautifully, and you've written such inspirational books. What makes that all happen? What do you wish to achieve with that?
Maybe it's a touch of eccentricity, Tom. There's something about it. There's definitely something about it. I always think the most difficult, used to say this to my children, the most difficult thing in life is just being yourself, being who you are, because we're drawn to fulfill all sorts of roles, aren't we? Husbands, wives, employees, employers, lovers, and so forth. And we play all of these roles. And yet the most difficult thing is simply to be who we are. And I take a few steps on a Camino, and that's where I'm most, where John is really, truly John. There's nobody to impress, nobody to talk to, nobody to worry about, nobody to criticize me, nobody for me to criticize, and I can just be myself. And I think that's what keeps drawing me back. Often, as I've got older, I don't know what, 55 or so Compostelas now. I always, now most of them.
Might be a record, John, 55 Compostelas?
Yeah, but come on. Most of these are because the guidebooks that I wrote for the Confraternity of St. James in the United Kingdom had to be updated. Therefore, I had to go walking, and I live here, so it was easier for me. It was easy for me to do that. But I often thought at the end, this might be the last one, and it's never the last one. When I published the 17th book, I said I'm not writing another one, and then there was the 18th book, and I said that's definitely it. And well, the big news is I've now written another book which will be published in January. It's going to be an ebook called Moving to Spain, and it's the compendium of everything that everybody needs to know to move to Spain. And many people dream about this, and I'm going to make this available free of charge for the Pilgrim associations. Why is that? Because the British government, their Foreign and Commonwealth Office, are paying for it to be published. So, I don't get any money out of it, but and it's a piece of work that I'm very proud of. And I'm wondering if that will be the last one. We'll see.
No, you'll have another one in you.
We'll see.
And Leigh, how about you? What is inspiring you to continue on and be of service and try to brainstorm how to be of even more service here to the Camino and the Pilgrims?
What inspires me is when I meet pilgrims that have walked into the city and I see how happy they are to have arrived. And when I get a call from somebody that says, hey, I heard this interview on your podcast, or I saw this on YouTube and I decided to walk because of that. That just makes me so inspired to keep going, because I know that this work is making a difference by providing a platform for pilgrims to come and talk about their stories. You know, I feel very strongly that we learn best through storytelling. And when I have pilgrims come on and they share the things that happened to them during their Camino, I think it really inspires other people to know that this is a great thing. I should go out and take this walk. And so when I hear that someone has decided to walk because they've heard somebody like Ann Bourne's interview, or anyone else, I think Brian Crothers is on here, his interview will be coming out soon. It just inspires me to keep going. You know, I love the Camino. I love the changes that it's brought to my life. And I think I've interviewed now close to 100 people. And so I know without a doubt that the Camino works. If you are open to it and you come with the right intentions, the Camino will work its magic on you and it will change your life.
You know, I think there was one person that said, Tom, if you do these interviews, you know, the people that may come on, they may want to self-promote themselves, and you don't. I mean, you both are so inspired and so generous and unselfish. But I just feel that for all of those that are watching today, for them to know how to get more inspiration on the Camino from each of you. Leigh, could you just tell us a little bit about what you do on a regular basis, your podcast and everything else?
Well, thank you for saying that, Tom. Well, I've been doing the podcast, the Camino Cafe podcast, for a couple of years now. And I see Kurt and Susan are on, and they were a part of the group when I first started that. And you know, that just kind of started through some happy hours, and it organically grew to becoming a podcast. I had no idea what I was doing. I probably still don't, but I enjoy doing it. And it's just so much fun to meet all the pilgrims that I've met from all around the world. So first off, the Camino Cafe podcast, that is on anywhere to listen to podcasts, so Spotify or Apple. And then Patty Pie, my partner in crime, she's on here somewhere. We just started a new show called Good Morning Santiago. And it is kind of a video magazine, I guess, about our love story with this great city and with the Camino. And so we just started that. I think we just put out our 4th episode this past week, and we're having a ball doing it. And it is helping us to meet even more pilgrims. And more importantly, I think being able to meet more people that are servicing pilgrims when they come into the city. And we're very hopeful that by doing this show, we are able to show folks that Santiago is a great place to spend a few days. So many pilgrims, as I've been interviewing them over the past couple of years, they say, oh, you know, I only stay one day, or, you know, I get too stressed out when I get to Santiago. It's too loud or too this. And I say, no, there's so much more to it. You should stay for a couple of days, if not even a week. So I hope through this show, we can bring ideas to pilgrims, plus help them to know about the services that are available once you arrive in Santiago. I think that's very important to know, as well as meet some of the people that are running these restaurants and running the albergues and running all the places that you're going to go when you do arrive. So anyway, we're having a ball with it. So that's how you can find the work that we're doing right now. And they are all just passion projects, just ways to, you know, tell people about the Camino, get the word out about all the things that it can offer to you.
How about your books? How about your books, John, that you've written?
Well, hang on a second. Todd McMahon is asking, is making an observation in the chat. He's saying not getting a Compostela some sort of sin. And one of the things, well, people think there are rules and all the rest of it. And one of the things that I always try to impress on people thinking about the pilgrimage is that really nothing is compulsory, apart from walking to Santiago and respecting the traditions of the Camino. And I wrote a wee thing about this. Can I just read it to you?
Yes.
And it's called "It Doesn't Matter." It doesn't matter whether you walk a route where you won't meet anyone else, or you walk the Camino Frances and meet thousands of others. It doesn't matter whether you sleep in hotels and hostels during your journey, or share accommodation with other pilgrims in albergues. It doesn't matter whether you take every detour to the holy places traditionally visited by the medieval pilgrims, or walk straight to Santiago in the shortest time possible. It doesn't matter whether you carry every item of kit on your back each day or arrange to have your baggage carried forward to your next destination. It doesn't matter whether you eat from the a la carte menu and enjoy very good wine or eat the menu del dia for €8. It doesn't matter whether you give according to your means in albergues and churches or give a minimum donation. It doesn't matter whether on your journey you journey in reflective silence or you take your iPod, iPhone, netbook, your laptop and other gadgets. It doesn't matter whether you buy designer walking clothes or spend the minimum equipment. It doesn't matter whether you get blisters, tendinitis and muscle strain, or enjoy a pain-free pilgrimage. It doesn't matter whether you pray each day, visit each church, and go to mass every evening, or you wouldn't step foot in a church. It doesn't matter whether you get a Compostela or not. What matters is that you walk and you observe the traditions of the pilgrimage and you walk to Santiago. So sorry for that. For that rant.
That's inspirational. You've told us as a pilgrim what matters you do on the Camino, and it's very simple. And simplicity happens to be one of the pillars of the American Pilgrims. That's one of the main things that we love to share with each other is keep it simple, maintain that simplicity that we experience and we learn on the Camino. Now, John, recently I read in the Confraternity of St. James newsletter that you wrote an article about how it is for people to get visas to live in Spain. And Leigh, you just went through the process of obtaining a visa to be able to live in Santiago. Could you just, if somebody is interested in living in Spain, might you give them some advice right now about is it possible to get a visa?
Well, I'd say if I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm not a person that likes paperwork at all. Administrative work is not my thing. But, I got some help along the way. You can get an attorney to help out, but you don't have to do that. The procedures are pretty straightforward. You just need to find out which consulate your area would need to go to apply for the visa. So for example, I was in the Seattle area when I applied. So for the Seattle area, I had to go through the San Francisco consulate for Spain. But anyway, if you go onto their website, there's a list of what the rules are, what you need to do, and it's very straightforward. It will help if you do speak Spanish because some of the forms are in Spanish, but you can get them translated. And really, you just kind of take it step by step. It's things like you have to get fingerprinted and you have to prove that you can, well, depending on what type of visa you're going to get, you may have to prove that you can be self-sufficient for a period of time financially. You have to get private insurance because you are not really a citizen of Spain. So you have to get private insurance. But I will tell everybody in the US that my private insurance is way less than what it was when I actually lived in the United States. So when I say private, don't get scared. It's not as expensive at all. Anyway, you go through that procedure and it's a lot of paperwork. It really is. None of it's really hard. It's just a lot of legwork. You got to do a lot of things like gather all of your bank statements for several months, things like that. Lots and lots and lots of copying and different things like that. But once you turn it all in, then Spain reviews it and you get approved and you get to come. And so there are all different types of visas. So the one I'm mostly talking about would be called the non-lucrative visa, but there are other ways. If you come and you buy 500,000 euro in cash, you can get a golden visa and you can become a resident right away of Spain and have all the rights. But if you don't want to do that, then the non-lucrative visa would be the easiest route here. So it's definitely doable. And like I said, if I can do it, any of you can do it. It certainly helps if you speak Spanish. I don't. And so that's something I'm still having to work on. So I would say if you have interest in moving, start learning your Spanish. It will make a huge difference. Also, I always tell everyone, probably the most important thing next to that is become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there are a lot of things that are very different here. And I think I was a little naive to some of that. It's like, oh, I walked a Camino. I know what it's like to live in Spain, but it's a whole nother thing when you actually move across the world and move to a new country, which, kind of sounds like, well, yeah, of course. But, you don't really realize that. I think for a lot of us pilgrims, it becomes a dream when we're walking. We see the for sale sign at an albergue and it's like, well, I want to move there, and so it looks easy because when we're walking the Camino, there's an infrastructure there and they're kind of used to what our needs are. But when you move here and you're a resident, it's a little bit more complex than that. But again, if I'm doing it, anyone can do it. But John's been working on a book, so I want to make sure he has a chance to talk about that.
John?
I will make it available to free of charge. The key thing about visas is at the moment, non-EU citizens, so Americans, the British people and so forth, can only remain in Spain for 90 days in any 180-day period. And they need a visa to stay longer. And the type of visa that you apply for is dependent on what you want to do. And you need to apply for the visa in your home country. So if you're coming to study, you'd apply for a student visa. If you're not going to do anything, you're going to retire. As Leigh says, you would apply for a non-lucrative visa. If you want to work, then you need to get a job in Spain first, and your employer in Spain starts the visa process, and so forth. But all of this information is available. And of course, people need to be prepared, and they need to have enough money to do it. And for the non-lucrative visa, I think it's 22,000 euros per year and 6,500 euros for your wife or other dependents. So people need to have their own resources and medical insurance, which provides care to at least the same standard as the Spanish health service does, because the aim is to ensure that immigrants don't become a burden on Spanish society. Anyway, we'll make all of this information available, and Tom, you can plan your move to come and live with us in Santiago.
We need more of you here. Please come.
Good. Let's open it up to questions, if you're okay with that, John and Leigh, that if a way of asking the question, if you would raise your hand, and then that pops you up into the front of the queue. And I see Sam was the first one to do that. So Sam, please let us know your question.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Perfectly.
Pardon?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you first very much for holding these meetings. I thoroughly enjoyed John Burley's this morning. He mentioned that there are many thousands of caminos people can walk. My question for you two guests this morning is there one specific camino that has given you the greatest joy? That's my question.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Sam, I would say I think, my first Camino is always going to stand out to me because, that kind of got the ball rolling. But this past year, I got to walk with my dad, and we walked when he was 77 and I was 57. So it was quite an honor to have that privilege to walk with my father, and to experience a Camino with him will always be probably the top of my list. It was a very, very exciting time. But I think each and every Camino you do, even a small training one I did this past May, no matter how long it is, no matter who you're with, I think it has a way of working on you and providing opportunities for learning and seeing the places in your life where you need to make some changes. So I think every Camino that I've experienced has been life-changing for me, but particularly that first, and then the one with my dad really stand out.
That's great. John?
Well, I think that's right. I think first love is a lasting love, and I walked the Via de la Plata from Seville to Santiago, and I've now been back 3 or 4 times to walk that route, and I absolutely love it. It's an epic route, and well, there we are.
Very good. Okay, the next one I see is not a name, but it says iPhone 8. If you have the label of iPhone 8, you're up next for your question, please. Let us know who you are and where you're from. Yes, you, iPhone 8.
The lady's on mute. She's on mute, Tom.
You have to unmute. We see you. There.
I don't know if it's me. I'll just ask a question.
That's you. You're on.
Oh, okay. My name's Erin Moore, and I live in Los Angeles, California. And what I was hearing in the "it does not matter" was that walking mattered. And that I was wondering about all the people that are on bikes or can't walk, or I wanted that comment to be expanded.
John, that was your comment.
Well, you're drawing me into controversy now. The whole issue of people on electric bikes and people on bikes is controversial. And I've had my own issues with cyclists when I've been on the Camino. And I now shout at people in different languages, get a bell and let us know that they're coming. But the way I look at it is this. If you bring the person, then perhaps their heart and soul will follow. And what I mean by that is I have absolutely no problem with people who walk from Sarria or people who walk short distances. I have no problem with people who send their rucksacks ahead or bring their servants to carry their rucksacks. And I have no problems with cyclists and electric cyclists as long as they don't run into me and they let me know that they're coming, because it is my experience. I was talking to a cyclist recently who said, I am definitely going to walk the next time and I'm coming back next year because I realize the experience is so much richer. So the Camino is about planting seeds of change in people's lives. Doesn't always happen, but often it does.
That's a good point, John. I think, letting go of the judgment of how somebody does their Camino, because we really don't know their story, right? There might be a reason that they're having to cycle or whatever. So, that's one of the areas I always have to work on when I'm walking, is not judging how somebody else is completing their Camino. I will say, though, with the electric bikes, like John, I've had some issues. I lived out in Salt Lake City near really some of the most famous mountain biking trails in the world are there. And electric bikes can be quite dangerous because they're quite heavy. And if the cyclist is not warning someone, they can be upon you very quickly. So I do think that, if somebody is choosing that route, to exercise extreme care, and when there are other options, when there's just a very narrow trail with a little room for people to be walking, it would be a great idea for them to take the other option, maybe the road or something, because as we all know, if you've walked, there are some areas that are quite narrow, and they would be very hard if a cyclist was upon you very quickly. But again, I do always have to work on not getting judgy, about how people are walking, because like John said, the seed is planted. And I do know a lot of cyclists, in particular, I know one person who did their very first Camino as a cyclist. They had no intention of ever really being a pilgrim. And today they're one of the biggest pilgrims I know. And they've walked, I think they're on their 11th or 12th right now. So we never know what that seed is planting, and we don't know their story.
Very true.
Well, medieval pilgrims came however they could.
Yeah, exactly.
With entourage or not, it's a bit odd for us to say, oh no, you should be walking.
Right. And I think the same comes along with, making comments, well, somebody shouldn't transport their luggage ahead, or they shouldn't do it this way. They shouldn't stay in this kind of place, I think the whole Camino provides us an exercise of letting go of how other people are doing things, letting go of judgment, and looking at what our own needs are, and making sure we're providing good self-care for ourselves. And that may look different for each one of us.
And maybe it's being in that Camino pilgrim spirit, having that spirit of a true pilgrim.
Yeah.
Lynn Kay, you're up next. You unmute.
Hola. I stepped away for 1 second and I thought I heard you say that John is writing a book, or Johnnie is writing a book about moving to Spain or getting visas. Oh, I have to get that right now. Actually, I'm in the process of getting a visa to move to Portugal. Because
congratulations.
I just did the Camino Português this year. And I took the central route, but I would really like to move to Portugal and be along the coastal route, and of course, continue to work with the Camino. So I don't have the 350,000 euros that it would take to get the Portuguese version of the golden visa, but I need all the help I can get. And if anybody knows anybody who's moved to Portugal, please let me know, because I'd love to get in touch with them.
Well, Lynn, I do. So email me. And
Okay.
I will connect you with
Oh, yay!
people,
Okay.
people
Thank
in
you.
Portugal, and with Americans who have recently moved there. So
Yeah.
email me and I'm happy to make that connection for you.
Okay, great.
And
Can
Lynn, I will add that if you join us this evening, you're in California. No, where are you right now, Lynn?
Actually, I'm in Georgia right now, and I've already joined.
So if you're in Georgia, Lynn, join us this evening for our third Zoom, where we're going to have Dan Mullins on. And Dan did at least one, if not two, interviews with some folks that moved to Portugal and started their own albergues in.
Oh, I need, yes, okay. So 8 o'clock my time, I believe.
Are you Eastern in Georgia?
Yes.
Okay, 8 o'clock your time. And you should find the links to that. That'll be Dan Mullins, and he is really excited to do his talk this evening. He'll also perform some songs. And I know Leigh and John, you both had conversations and meetings with Dan, and isn't he inspirational?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I just re-upped this evening, so I've been a member for a while. But
that's right. Thank you.
Dan was just here in Santiago and did a concert for Pilgrims here. It was so great. Yeah, so make sure you go to that one tonight. He's such a great storyteller, and his music, of course, is phenomenal.
And you got to meet his family then, Leigh.
We sure did. And what a special family they are. And, you know, they walked the Camino with him. He had two of his sons with him and his wife and a dear friend that lives near them. And it was so much fun finally getting to meet him. I mean, I think for 2 years, I listened to his podcast nonstop as I was preparing and walking. And so I was just like a fangirl meeting him. So, and he's just even kinder in person, and just an amazing storyteller. So yeah, make sure you guys go to that tonight. That's going to be a great presentation. So
a couple of comments I saw in chat. Ann Bourne, who's also our mutual friend, she said that they started doing Compostelas where you would take your credential and prove that you walked the last 100 kilometers. They only started that, I guess she said, in 1999. And the other thing is that Ann did, no promotion here, but I just think that it's a source of information and a resource, that Ann did write a book about walking the Camino in winter. And if you remember, last year on this date, exactly 52 weeks ago, Ann was on this on this Zoom, and she shared her Camino, and she was live streaming from the Camino in winter there in December. And she finished in Santiago, I believe, at Christmas, John, right? Or
Yes,
close.
Absolutely.
Very good. And so next we're going to go to iPhone. Do I recognize that person with their hand up with the iPhone? It says iPhone, and you got a colorful painting behind you. Yes.
That's me. That's me. I thought I was on video. It's me, Joanne Baker.
Joanne, I thought that was you. Yes.
Hi, Joanne.
Joanne.
Hello, John, especially, since the reason I'm going to say something today is because you don't just have to walk the Camino. You can be a hospitalera or hospitalero. And I know John made my experience in the Pilgrim office absolutely wonderful, a 2-week period. And you can stay in Santiago for 2 weeks that way and discover the museums and the restaurants and the cathedral and so on. But shout out, Tom, that the American Pilgrims has a hospitalera training, and you can say more about that. And I did it, and it changed. That also changed my life. It was an addendum to having walked the Camino 1.5 times. And if you don't have time or you don't have the physicality to actually walk, you can still experience the Camino experience by being a hospitalera, which was so wonderful. I was in a very large one, which was a very different experience from being in a private eight-bed albergue, and both were very interesting, as well as the Pilgrim office. And so if you can't walk or don't want to engage on that long level, you can still have the Pilgrim experience and be part of the Pilgrim's experience by offering them a good, safe place to sleep and a high protein meal, which they crave, and conversation and all that good stuff. So there's no question. Just hello, everybody. And
Hello.
I say do the hospitalera training through the American Pilgrims on the Camino.
Wonderful.
And I do know that there will be a hospitalero training in Lake Tahoe a few days before our gathering in mid-April, right after Easter. So if you're interested, you got to be one of the first ones to sign up. It's limited to about 20 people, I believe. And it is an awesome experience. Todd, you're up next with your hand raised to ask a question.
Hi, I unmuted. I did the Camino Francis in September, and now I'm been editing footage from it, doing videos, and I kind of been reliving it. And the thing about the Camino Francis is I think it's very inspirational. You got Cruz de Ferro, you got Osobero, you got all this stuff that I think is just wonderful. But now I'm thinking about doing some other Caminos. And is it going to be kind of like a letdown from the Camino Francis? Are there any halfway decent inspirational places?
I'll take that for a second. And
Cool.
then, John, I know you're going to have stuff to add to it. I would say, Todd, I think the Camino Frances is always going to hold a special place in my heart, right? Because, well, it's amazing. But this past year, I walked the Camino Portuguese with my dad, and I had such an amazing experience. It was different, right? Just like every Camino is different. But I think, again, it's about the intention that you put into the walk and the experiences that you open yourself up to, that any Camino route, probably the most boring one in the world, I think, can be fantastic. But I will tell you this, the Camino Portuguese, we also did the spiritual variant, and it was unlike anything on the Frances. And I haven't been able to do the seaside one on the Portuguese, but I know John has done that, so he might want to talk about that. But I want to encourage you to try different ones, because I think you'll just have a different experience, and you don't know what kind of transformation will come from that. And also, I'll add that you are a different person each time you walk, right? You've got new things that you're kind of unraveling, new things that you're working on. So I think every Camino, no matter what route, is a whole new experience for you. And I encourage you to walk whatever one you want to walk. Try different ones. Continue to walk the same one you've walked before. I don't think it matters, as long as you have the right intention and you just walk. Just walk. I don't know, John, what would you add?
I have nothing to add to that.
No?
Todd, we guarantee that Leigh and I will inspire you when you reach Santiago.
Yes.
If I could just add, a couple of my last Caminos were the Primitivo. And the Primitivo is very inspiring. You get some really nice, beautiful mountains. You go through historic Lugo. But the nice thing about that too is, and that is more solitude on the Primitivo, and it's the original route. But then you come into Melide, and then you join the Francis route. So you get the best of both worlds, I think, coming and doing the last few days with the Francis route and having you're sharing that with all the other fellow pilgrims. So I hope that answers your question, Todd. Let's go to MJ and your question, please.
So, Johnnie, I have had this experience. I've told people the only way I'm going to die in the Camino is if I get hit by a bicycle. And I've been terrified. I'm someone who weaves across because I have some balance issues. And so I'm always looking for the safest route. I'm not going on the left and staying on the left all the time. I've gotten sort of paranoid about looking back over my shoulder all the time to look for people. But of course you space out during the day and and these bikes come up so fast. My question is, and this might almost be more for Tom or maybe Steve, is there something that we as a group, the American Pilgrims on the Camino, Johnnie, Leigh, somebody in this group, where we can maybe even as part of our grants program, put up signs, bicyclists have, ring or announce yourself before, somehow tell people, and maybe even get to the bike shops that are renting bikes saying, please tell people they must have a bell, or at least yell bicicleta as they come up over the hill and they see pilgrims, so that people know that they're coming. It is a true danger. And I'll stop there and say, I think there's an opportunity with the brain power in this room and the commitment we have to the Camino to make a change in this regard.
John, looks like you want to say something.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I completely agree, MJ. And it's a matter of fact that it's against the law in Spain to cycle a bicycle without a bell. And so what I would love to see are the Camino associations like American Pilgrims on the Camino writing to the national police, asking for a meeting with the national police in Spain, involve the other pilgrim associations in Spain, and let's get heads together to see how this law can be enforced. And MJ, I think you've come up with a wonderful idea of writing to the cycle hire shops to say to them, will you give this leaflet, and American Pilgrims can make a grant for this, translate it into a number of different languages and make a leaflet available to people hiring bicycles, telling them about courtesy on the Camino. Please mind the pilgrims. So there we are. Tom, there's another suggestion for your next board meeting.
Yep, very good. And the first thing you can do, MJ, today is you can join the bicycling Camino Pilgrims. There is a Facebook for them.
I am not on Facebook, Tom. So
I'm not either. So we'll let that go. And if somebody is on Facebook, they might share that on that Facebook page.
I do have a few of your email or contacts, and I may just follow up with something. So to try and keep this ball rolling. Thank you.
MJ.
I have to say hi, MJ.
Hey,
good seeing you here. And
Great.
glad to hear you're going to work on this. This is wonderful.
Nancy,
we can do.
Nancy,
I don't find where to raise my hand. Can anybody hear me? Hello?
Who is this?
This is Marta. I joined late. I am so sorry. I am in a different time zone.
Hi, Marta.
Sorry.
Hello.
I did my Camino 2015. My name is Marta Merriman, and I actually officially started in Boca Raton, Florida, because I got my intention for plenary indulgence. So I started with the mass pledging for my intention, and I got from the Camino from the United States my pilgrim credentials. So I was just wondering, and you may already have discussed that if there are certain protocols for the people, like majority, I think they would, but for me, it was definitely my intention of plenary indulgence for the repose of the soul of my mother. And it's so funny that as I click on you all, I just happen to have here, in Ponferrada, not Ponferrada, I'm sorry, in Finisterra, and then this, which I did my Camino on the name of my mom. So is there a religious ceremony that we could encourage in any parish here in the United States? Now I live in Atlanta, that will initiate for us who fly to join in whatever part that we start the Camino. So we start with the intention of plenary indulgence and then the celebration on the return.
Leigh or John, do you have a?
Well, I'm sure. Now here he says, I can't guarantee this, but I'm fairly certain that any parish that you go to, Marta, and you ask for a blessing before you set out on your pilgrimage, they will be happy to do that. And I mean, there are many blessings printed. I've written blessings myself. There are traditional blessings, and they would be very happy to give you a pilgrim blessing before you set out.
Yeah, what I felt here, the community was participant. We did it on the beach. The priest was so cooperative, and he bring the shell. He blessed my shell. He blessed my backpack. Of course, I went by myself. My heart was broken. I was not suited for the journey because I was not in shape. I was doing it in the impetu of the passion of the dead, but faith carried me through. And I just felt that pilgrim intention of the plenary indulgence is the part of the pilgrims, right? The walking and the bicycles and all of that is part of the journey. But the outcome, I thought it was so fantastic, and just the cooperation of that priest. So I will be happy to be in any committee that puts together something for parishes to be aware of the significance of the intention blessing. Thank you.
That's a great idea, Marta. And I was also going to add, many of I think all the local chapters of APOC, you can go to a shell ceremony in your area, which is a nice thing that can be done too. So anyone that's getting ready to go and take a Camino on that particular year, the local chapter, and maybe Tom, you'll speak to this, but we'll actually do a shell ceremony to mark the intention of that pilgrim getting ready to go and walk.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It was so cool. I'll keep in touch with you all. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you.
The American Pilgrims have done many, many shell ceremonies. In fact, we have one, of course, at our national gathering every year, and then the individual chapters. I know here in South Bend, Indiana, we do them multiple times during the year whenever anybody is going on the Camino. And it's a very special way. So get in contact with your local chapter of the American Pilgrims on the Camino, and that Camino address online is americanpilgrims.org, americanpilgrims.org. And we go to Nancy. Let's ask one last question. Nancy, iPhone 1, you've got a question. Unmute. Okay.
I don't know if I'm Nancy iPhone 1 because it doesn't say anything. Do you hear me?
We hear you, Nancy.
Okay. Well, I finished my Camino last year on this day, and I did 100 kilometers from Ponta de Lima to Santiago. And when I got my certificate, I was really excited, but I never really stopped and got stamps along the way, even though some of the residences that I stayed at, they did it if I didn't get to the church. And I was wondering if I could do the training with the certificate, but I don't have all the stamps.
You've got your Compostela.
Yes.
And that's what American Pilgrims on the Camino require, is you to hold a Compostela.
Okay.
I wouldn't beat yourself up about the number of stamps you've got. It would be
well, I'm not beating myself up. It was marvelous. I had angels along the way. In Ponta de Lima, my sticks broke, and I had Manuel from this woodworking shop. He helped me out, and he called in a reporter, and I was interviewed on the Camino in Ponta de Lima as my first. Explaining about my first Camino. It's probably in Portuguese, so and I don't know if it was ever printed because then I moved on from there. But I wanted to do the training, but I don't have all the stamps. I just have my certificate.
You're looking to do the training as a hospitalero?
Yes, sir.
So did you ever stay in a donativo or a real albergue,
No, I basically stayed in residences and in hostels. I stayed in a hostel when I got to Santiago, actually. I might have a stamp from that one.
I would suggest that you go and email hospitalero at AmericanPilgrims.org. And Daniel or Carmen will be happy to answer your questions if you may qualify to become a Hospitalero trained pilgrim. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
AmericanPilgrims.org.
Got it.
And you were speaking, Nancy, of angels on the Camino.
Yes.
And I think as we've now entered an hour here, that I believe that John and Leigh, you are real Camino angels. And I admire you guys both so much. John, we're going to make your book available to members of the American Pilgrims. That's a very, very generous offer you're making. We're working on that now, and we'll continue those conversations. And shortly, we'll have information on that on the AmericanPilgrims.org website. And
so Tom, let me just make clear that it's Johnny's book on the Guide to Santiago that we're making available.
Right.
It'll be a great resource when people arrive. Yep.
Okay.
I just wondered, Tom, if we can ask how many people will be coming to Santiago this coming year. I see Ann Bourne's got her hand up. Who else is coming? Yeah? How many of you? Fantastic. Wonderful.
Tom, can I say what a pleasure it's been to meet everyone? It's been great. We should do this more often.
Maybe, yes. I think that's an excellent idea, John. If you're willing, we're willing.
I would sure love it. It's been great seeing everybody at APOC.
Could you tell us about that book that we're going to make available here very soon that you've written? Just tell us about that book just briefly.
In January, there's a charitable organization called Age in Spain, of which I am the president. That organization will publish a new book, a full, complete version of Moving to Spain, everything that everybody needs to know. And I will make that available to American Pilgrims on the Camino. You can put it on your website, you can give it to your members, you can do what you like with it. The more people who avail themselves of this resource, the better.